In the first chapter of Laudato Si, we see a thorough examination of the science around the ecological crisis. It covers pollution, waste, climate change, the throwaway culture, water, loss of biodiversity, decline of the quality of life and breakdown of society, and global inequality. The document names and describes these issues, and it specifically points out how the human race harms our Mother Earth. It also draws links between ecological and social injustice. One of the parts that spoke to me very clearly is the part about the throwaway culture. The idea that we pull something out of the earth, we turn it into something and we use it, then we discard it, is a very linear pattern that is not sustainable, and we need to break this straight line and turn it into a circle. Some people call it the circular economy. There's an image in the text that demonstrates how a circular economy works, and you may like to pause the video now to read it. We also need to have the same approach to humans as well. When I was a teenager, my grandmother was quite ill and lonely, and she lost her husband. And although she still had her friends, she missed her family. We visited her when we could, but only for a short time. She lives on the Gold Coast of Australia, and when we would visit her as a family, my parents would want to use the time to go and do other things, like see attractions, go shopping at some of the factory outlets. But all I wanted to do was sit, listen, and play games with my nan. When I was old enough, I began to make the time to go visit her myself so that we could just spend time together. I enjoy my time walking slowly next to her when going out, listening to her over cups of tea, and sharing meals with her. To me, I felt that my family were throwing away the time that they spent with her, and instead I wanted to treasure that time. Another example of how the throwaway culture relates to our human interactions is how we interact with retail workers. When we go into the shopping centres, we barely interact with the workers who spend so much of their time trying to make our experience worthwhile. When I learned about the throwaway culture, my mindset changed. For example, I started shopping at my local bulk food store up at Hervey Bay, and I would spend the time talking to the ladies at the shop. We would share recipes, discuss ideas, and talk about our lives, and made a true connection. This interaction I will never forget. It may not be obvious at first, but this throwaway culture and other beliefs about the need to expand, grow, gain, and progress as humanity that inform our current attitudes towards the environment are harmful to our planet. In Chapter 1, Pope Francis explains, "The continued acceleration of changes affecting humanity and the planet is coupled today with a more intensified pace of life and work, which might be called rapidification. Although change is part of the working of complex systems, the speed with which human activity has developed contrasts with the naturally slow pace of biological evolution. Moreover, the goals of this rapid and constant change are not necessarily geared to the common good or to integral and sustainable human development. Change is something desirable, yet it becomes a source of anxiety when it causes harm to the world and to the quality of much of humanity." Pope Francis uses some very visceral language about pollution and the throwaway culture. The earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. Pope Francis pointedly names this global crisis. Climate change is a global problem with grave implications: environmental, social, economic, political, and for the distribution of goods. It represents one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day. He truly brings together the fact that the climate crisis is also a humanitarian crisis. Let us now examine the next virtue and sin, which is care and harm. We are called to cooperate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each according to his or her own culture, experience, involvements, and talents. Harm, on the other hand, is demonstrated when Pope Francis says, "The sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of goods with which God has endowed her." In this part of Laudato Si, it is clear that Pope Francis talks about how we sin and harm the environment. Father Joshua would say that we then need to think about ways in which we can care for creation. It is a virtue to be caring for creation. In the next section, we will be considering how the environment has been harmed and how then we can care for it instead. Of course, we already know a lot of this information from our own experiences. So before moving on, I would like you to write down all of the big issues that you know about that come under the umbrella of the ecological crisis. That is all the ways that humans have harmed the environment. You may wish to remember and add to the umbrella that we considered in the introduction. Complete activity 1 now and name all the problems that you know we face as part of the ecological crisis.